The Guide. I never knew you existed before, but now you're all I can think about. From the moment I saw you, something within me said, that's it, that's the one. I was nervous because I'd never been a guide before, but I know I'm ready for this moment. The last thing I remembered before dying was reading a small card, then looking up and seeing terrible red, peering eyes into mine. Since this was my first time, I decided to do what my guide did for me. You finally stepped out of your car and started walking inside, stumbling on the icy sidewalk, peering tentatively at the icicles above. If I was able, I would laugh at the memory of my mother, or perhaps that was my grandmother. So long ago, warning me of the deadly dangers the icicles pose. But now I know better. That isn't how death works at all. You slam the door behind you, but I glide through confidently, for I still know that you're still invisible to my eyes. You turn towards the bathroom, and I blushed, and choose not to follow. Instead, I explored your house and pondered on what sort of a person you must be. I wonder if you would take this gracefully or filled with terror. I wonder if you are ready. I self-consciously pulled at my long black robe, and I glanced again at the card I hurriedly wrote. Making sure my writing is legible, as you exit the bathroom and head towards the kitchen, I take my opportunity to lay the card gently on your table, where I know you must soon or later notice it. Take your time, though we're in no rush. You hum to Bohemian Rhapsody to yourself as you pull a frozen dinner from the freezer and popped it in the microwave. I consider starting a fire to make this my first grand experience more grand. But I think you would prefer it my way. I could almost feel an echo on a long, stilled heart as you turn around and fixate on my note. Peering around anxiously, you bend down to pick it up and read it. I get into place, because I know as soon as you read my name, you will be able to see me. And I must make myself terrifyingly presentable. This is so exciting! My name is Death. I'm the only Death, but one of many. See, most people think of death as falling asleep and waking up to the other side. But that's not right at all. Death is like being pulled by your deep ankle deep into the deepest of oceans. Inexplicable and suffocating. I am here to drag you here. For none can achieve death on their own. You shudder in confusion and look up to see me. A gruttily and a heartily scream escaped your lips. Really? Am I that terrible? As I reach out for your hand and pull you through the dimensions into mine, as the mortals see it, to your death. SpongeBob's Bad Day. Have you ever heard of the lost episode from SpongeBob, episode from season 12? It was aired at 2 a.m. and the episode was Bubble Bath's Tab. It was gonna air at 1 p.m. for the first time, but never did. Instead, they were supposed to show a repeat of Bubble Teen Jam at 1 p.m. But 1 p.m. viewers were shown a half-hour message saying they decided to air Bubble Bath's Tab at 2 a.m. But the viewers were not shown Bubble Bath's Tab, but something more disturbing. The viewers reported seeing an episode that they could not believe Nicktoon would air. they said it started with a title card saying, SpongeBob's Bad Day. The episode started with SpongeBob walking to the farm, but he looked depressed. Then it cut to a few frames of SpongeBob with black holes for eyes, which looks like Max and Ruby 0004. It then cut to SpongeBob going to the farm. He said, "Hey, Bubble Bass. I've seen that you've been waiting for me the whole time." Ah! He saw Bubble Bass covered in blood, dead as Mingle cut up corpse on the side of the ground, and his eyes were gouged out. SpongeBob screamed in fear, and strangely, he wasn't wearing anything. Then it cuts to static and laughing sounds for a minute, and viewers were shown a couple of grotesque images of SpongeBob that they can't describe how terrifying they were. Then it cut to an image of SpongeBob with his head cocked back and one of his eyeballs hanging out of his head, and his other one was a red pupil. Then they heard realistic screaming that sounded like it was coming from their house. Then it cut to static again for a few minutes, and it cut back to SpongeBob. He had dead bodies by him, and they were dead people, not cartoon people. Then the screen showed a red picture of Patrick and SpongeBob with holes in their eyes and no mouth. And then next you can hear, "Join us in hell." Ah! There was a Russian text with translate to, "Death is our only release." Max and Ruby 0004 reference. And then it showed an early version of SpongeBob in creepy music that sounded like Suicide Mouse.avi playing in the background. It showed SpongeBob's house. It was on fire, and blood was going down the wall. After a few seconds, the message popped up saying, "I will find you and hunt you down. If so, SpongeBob might be targeting you." Also, what was strangely was that Patrick and Squidward's house were not there, but instead big holes with fire coming out of them where their house used to be. Then the screen flashed 666, and it cut out to a picture of SpongeBob with blood coming out of his holes in his body. Then the screen turned gray, and it showed a picture of Patrick with a gun. When the episode was over, the viewers heard a gunshot. 500 people viewed this episode that was aired. 2 was found dead in an insane asylum. Lastly, people reported that they had trauma issues and SpongeBob sent them, many people counting 300 people, to an insane asylum because the next text on the screen, because SpongeBob was trying to kill them. Those 300 people were targeted by SpongeBob. He said he doesn't have much time to live, so tell other people about this tale as his dying wish. He was found dead 10 days later. What the fuck did I just read? The hell? Oh, look at realistic blood. Ah! The fuck? Okay. Someone was smoking weed. Dead Bart. You know how Fox has a weird way of counting Simpson episodes? They refuse to count a couple of them, making the amount of episodes inconsistent. The reason for the lost episode from season 1? Finding out that the missing episode is difficult, no one was working on the show at the time like to talk about it. From what has been placed together, the last episode was written entirely by Matt Groening during the production of the first season. Matt started to act strangely. He was very quiet, seemed nervous and morbid, mentioning this to anyone who was present, resulting in them getting very angry and forbidding you get to even mention it to Matt. I first heard of it at the event that David Silverman was speaking. Someone in the crowd asked about the episode, and Silverman simply left the stage, ending the presentation hours early. The episode production number was 7G06. The title was Dead Bart. The episode labels 7G06, also known as Moaning Lisa, was made later and given Dead Bart production code to hide the later existence. In addition to getting angry, asking anyone who was on the show about this was will to cause them to do everything they can do to stop you from directly communicating with Matt Groening. At a fan event, I managed to follow him after he spoke to the crowd, and eventually had a chance to talk to him alone as he was leaving the building. He didn't seem upset that I followed him, probably expect a typical encounter with an obsessive fan. When I mentioned the lost episode though, all colors drained from his face, and he stared trembling when I asked him if he could tell me any details. He sounded like he was on the verge of tears. He grabbed a piece of paper, wrote something on it, and handed it to me. He begged me never to mention the episode again. The piece of paper had a website addressed on it. I would rather not say what it was, for the reason you'll see in a second. I entered the address onto my browser, and I came to the site that was completely black, except a yellow text. I downloaded the link. I clicked on it, and a file started downloading. Once the file was downloading, my computer went crazy. It was the worst virus I had ever seen. System restore didn't work. The entire computer had to be rebooted. Before doing this though, I copied a file on a CD. I tried to open it on my now empty computer, and as I suspected, there was an episode called Simpson on it. The episode started off like any other episode, but a very poor quality animation. If you've seen the original animation for Some Enchanted Evening, it was similar but less stable. The first act was fairly normal, but the way the characters acted was a bit off. Homer seemed more angrier, Marge seemed more depressed, Lisa seemed anxious, Bart seemed to be genuinely angered and hatred towards his parents. The episode was about the Simpsons going on a plane trip. Near the end of the first act, the plane was taking off. Bart was fooling around as you would expect. However, the plane was about 50 feet off the ground. Bart broke down a window on the plane and was sucked out. At the beginning of the series, Matt had an idea that the animation style on Simpson world represents life, and the death turned things more realistic. This was used in this episode. The Bart's picture of the corpse was barely recognizable. They took full advantage of it not having to move and made an almost photorealistic drawing of his dead body. Act 1 ended with a shot of Bart's corpse. When Act 2 started, Homer, Marge, and Lisa were sitting at the table, crying. The crying went on. It got more pained and sounded more realistic. Better acting than you would think possible. The animation started to decay even more as they cried, and you could hear murmuring in the background. The characters could barely be made out. They were stretching and blurred. They looked like deformed shadows of a random bright colors thrown on them. Their faces were looking in the window, flashing in and out, so you were never sure what they looked like. The crying went on for all of Act 2. Act 3 opened with a little title card saying, "A year has passed. Homer, Marge, and Lisa were skeletally thin and still sitting on the table. There was no sign of Maggie or the pets. They decided to visit Bart's grave. Springfield was completely deserted. As they were walking to the cemetery, the house became more and more decrepit. They all looked abandoned. When they were going to the grave, Bart's body was just lying there in front of the tombstone, looking like it did at the end of Act 1. The family started crying again. Eventually, they stopped, and they just stared at Bart's body. The camera zoomed on Homer's face. According to the summary, Homer tells a joke at this part, but it isn't audible in this version. I saw. Can you tell what Homer is saying?" The view zoomed out of the episode came to a close. The tombstone in the background had their names and every Simpson guest star on them. Some of them no one had heard of in 1989. Some of them haven't even been shown on the show yet. All of them had death dates on them. For guests who died since, like Michael Jackson and George Harrison, the dates were there when they would die. The credits were completely silent and seemed handwritten. The final image was the Simpson family on the couch, like in the intros, but all drawn in hyper-realistic, lifeless style of Bart's corpse. A thought occurred to me after seeing the episode for the first time. You could try to use the tombstone to protect the deaths of every living guest star from The Simpsons, but there's something odd about most of one of them who haven't died yet. All their deaths are listed as the same date. Pokemon Black. I'm what you call the collector of bootleg Pokemon games. Pokemon Diamond and Jade, Chaos Black, etc. It's amazing the frequencies with which you can find them at a pawn shop, Goodwill, flea market, and such. They're generally fun, even if they are unplayable, which they often are. The mistranslation and the poor quality makes them unintentionally humorous. I've been able to find most of them that I've played online, but there's one that I haven't seen any mention of. I bought it at a flea market about 5 years ago. Here's a picture of the cartridge. In the case, anyone recognize it? Unfortunately, when I moved 2 years ago, I lost the game, so I can't provide you with screen caps. Sorry. The game started with the familiar Noradadrone and Gengar intro of Red and Blue version. However, the press start screen had been altered. Red was there, but the Pokemon did not cycle though. It also said Black version under the Pokemon logo. Upon selecting New Game, the game started with Professor Oak's speech, and quickly became evident that the game was essentially Pokemon Red version. After selecting your starter, if you look at your Pokemon, you had an additional to Bulbasaur's, Charmander, and Squirtles, and other Pokemon Ghost. The Pokemon was level 1. It had the sprite of the ghost that you encounter in Lavender Town before obtaining the Sylph Scope. It had one attack, Curse. I know that there is a real move named Curse, but the attack did not exist in Generation 1, so it appears it was a hacked in. Defending Pokemons were unable to attack Ghost. It would only say that they were too scared to move. The move Curse was used in the battle. The screen would cut out to black, the cry of defending Pokemon would be heard, but it was distorted. Play at much lower pitch than normal, the Pokemon battle screen would reappear and the defending Pokemon would be gone. If used in battle against a trainer, when the Pokeballs represents their Pokemon would appear in the corner, they would have one fewer Pokeball. The implication that the Pokemon died. There was even stranger is that after defeating a trainer and seeing Red receive $200 for winning, the battle command would appear again, and if you select Run, the battle would end as normally as it does. You could also select Curse if you did. Upon returning to the overworld, the trainer's sprite will be gone. After leaving and re-entering the area, the spot where the trainer had been would be replaced with a tombstone, like the last one in Lavender Town. The move Curse was unstable in all instances. It would fail against ghost Pokemon. It would also fail if it was used against trainers that you would have to face again, such as your rival or Giovanni. It was unstable to your final battle against them. However, I figured this was a gimmick of the game, allowing you to use previously uncapturable ghosts, and because Curse made the game so easy, I essentially used it throughout the whole adventure. The game changed quite a bit after defeating the Elite Four. After viewing the Hall of Fame, which consists of Ghost and a couple other Pokemon I use for HMs, the screen cut to black. A box appeared with the words, "Many years later." It then cut out to Lavender Town. An old man was standing, looking at the tombstones. You realize this man was your character. The man moved at only half of the normal walking speed. You no longer had any Pokemon with you, not even Ghost, who up to this point had been impossible to remove from your party, though depositing them in the PC. The overworld was entirely empty. There was no people at all. There was still the tombstone of the trainers that you used Cursed on, however. You could pretty much go anywhere in the overworld at this point, though your movement was limited by the fact that you had no Pokemon to use in the HMs. And regardless where you went, the music of Lavender Town continued on an infinite loop. After wandering for a while, I found that if you go through Diglett's cave, one of the cut tables brush that normally blocks the path on the other side is no longer there, allowing you to advance to and return to Pallet Town. Upon entering your house and going to the exact tile where you start the game, the screen would cut to black. Then a sprite of Caterpie would appear. It was replaced by a Weedle, and then a Pidgey. I soon realized the Pokemon progression from Rattata and Blastoids, that these were all of the Pokemon that I had used Cursed on. After the event of the rivals team, a youngster appeared, and then a bug catcher. These were the trainers I cursed. Throughout the sequence, Lavender Town music was playing, but it would slowly decrease in pitch. By the time the rival appeared on the screen, it was a little more demonic and rumble. Another cut to black. A few moments later, the battle screen suddenly appeared. Your trainer sprite was now of an old man, the same one as the one that teaches you how to catch a Pokemon in Viridian City. Ghost appeared on the other side along with the words, "Ghost wants to fight." You could use items, and you had no Pokemon. If you tried to run, you couldn't escape. The only option was fight. Using fight would immediately cause you to use struggle, which didn't affect Ghost but did chip a bit of health of your own. It was Ghost's turn to attack, and would simply said eventually, when your HP reaches critical point, Ghost would finally use Curse. The screen cut to black a final time. Regardless of the buttons you press, you were permanently stuck in the black screen. At this point, the only thing you could do was turn the Game Boy off. When you played it, New Game was the only option. The game had erased the file. I played through the hack game many times, and every time the game ended with the sequence, several times I didn't even use Ghost at all. Though he was impossible to remove from the party. In this case, I did not show any Pokemon or trainers and simply cut to the climactic battle with Ghost. I'm not sure what the motives were behind the creator of this hack. It was widely disturbed, so it was presumably not the monetary gain. It was very well done for a bootleg. It seems he was trying to convey a message. Though it seems I am the sole receiver of this message. I am not entirely sure what it was. The inevitability of death? The pointlessness of it? Perhaps he was implying trying to morbidly inject death and darkness into children's games. Regardless, this children's game has me think, and it was made to make me cry. Edward Mordrake. Edward Mordrake was a 19th century English nobleman born with a second face on the back of his head. While Mordrake himself was handsome and posed, the face of the opposite to his own was malformed, hideous, and deranged, and the whispers with depraved notion that only Mordrake could hear, as though it was his own separate entity. Despite Mordrake having possessed many talents and skills, the second face eventually drove him insane, and he was committed to Bedlam Asylum. Eventually he escaped his confines and joined a freak show troupe, feeling that it would be the only place where he could live a life free from the world's hatred. However, during the events of Halloween night, he was driven by the face to kill his entire courtier before killing himself. The Canaries have a superstition that any performance on Halloween, even trivial ones, risk summoning Mordrake. Once he appears, an ominous thunderstorm brews on the night horizon, casting streaks of natural lighting in the sky, while a thick, bright green frog swirls wherever he treads. The whispering of his second face can be vague, hearing telling him what it desires. The life of one, the Canaries. Here is an encounter with Edward Mordrake. Mordrake is summoned to the Fort Els Cabinet of the Corsairs on Halloween 1952, while the freaks are encamped in Jupiter. Despite the superstition warnings by the Canaries of Mordrake's legend, Elsa Mars demanded they rehearse her musical number, coined by a false prophecy, that a dark-haired man will revive her career. Mordrake himself walked into the performance tent to watch Elsa rehearse, and Elsa believed him to be a man from the prophecies, but he left her before she was finished. He materialized inside the trailer of Ethel Darling and bid her to tell her the tale. Much moved by the sympathetic to Ethel's plight, though Ethel was convinced that she was to be the one taken, as the legend demanded, the second face whispered, "Not the one," and she was spared. Mordrake interrogated Susie and Paul. Susie is spared because her accidental murder is what inspired her to perform and make herself a better living, while Paul's notion that he could have been successful with his handsome face and normal body is sympathized by Mordrake, and he is spared too. Pepper and Salty are innocent, and spared them too. He goes to Elsa, who believes him to be the talent scout. He is unmoved by Elsa's story and intends to take her when he hears Dandy and Twisty shows nearby and compiles Twisty to tell the story and makes the second face weep. Mordrake kills Twisty and invites the spirit to join the ghostly troupe, which he happily accepts. He was ultimately summoned by Elsa Mars on her last appearing on Halloween night. He, accompanied by Twisty and the tall man who joined them, confronts her on stage. He stabs her, but she is spared and sent to heaven, as Elsa's place was not with him. The powers that Edwin Mordrake possessed are powerful spiritual energy with a variety of supernatural abilities. Alongside the Butcher, he could be considered one of the most powerful ghosts in the American Horror Story universe. Darkness in the rearview mirror. I have always been uneasy driving alone at night. It was worse for the first few times, when I had just gotten my license, but the nagging fear just had never gone away to this day. It was disorienting to look at the mirrors and see nothing. I mean nothing but consuming blackness of the night. It makes me hesitant to check the mirrors. Should I see the dark void, or worse, something sitting in the back of my seat staring at me? In the summer of 2013, I found myself driving home alone on the highway of 902 from a party. It was almost midnight, and needless to say, it was pitch black. As usual at night, I was on edge. I had a radio off, and I could hear nothing but muffled roar of tires on the pavement and dull hum on the engine. I stole a glance into the middle of the rearview mirror, and I saw nothing but darkness through the back window. I know that I looked backwards and saw nothing. I'm sure of it, just seemingly endless blackness of the night. I remember it so clearly because not 10 seconds later a car passed me on the left on the headlights on. And I had one of those sudden adrenaline rushes, like when you think you see a person outside your bathroom window when it's just a tree, or when you start waking at night with a feeling of falling. 10 seconds earlier, nothing had been behind me. Suddenly, a car. I drove all the way home shivering and knowing something that was off. The next morning, I found 2 sets of scratches near the back of my van. One was of the left view rear, and the other one was on the right. The car was pretty old. They could have been there for months, but this was the first time that I distinctly remember seeing them. In hindsight, there were 2 possibilities for what happened that night. Possibility 1, by some glitch of reality, or something paranormal. There a car had somewhere appeared behind me, within 10 seconds of me checking the mirror, like some weird ghost crap or something. However, the second option is what makes my blood cold so bad whenever I consider it. It didn't even occur to me until months later, the fact, but it makes me dread driving alone at night even more. Possibility 2. The car was normal. It had approached me from the rear and passed me to the left. However, something large and wide, as a black at night, had been clinging to the rear of my car, obscuring my view through the window and leaving a deep scratch on the side. And I had inadvertently driven it home with me. Jeff the Killer. Excerpt from the local newspaper. Anonymous unknown. Killer is still at large. After a few weeks of unexplained murders, the anonymous unknown killer is still on the rise. After a little evidence has been found, a young boy states that he survived one of the killer's attacks and bravely tells the story. I had a bad dream. I woke up in the middle of the night, says the boy. I saw that for some reason the window was open. Even though I remember being it closed before I went to bed. I got up, shut it once more. Afterwards, I simply crawled under my covers and tried to get back to sleep. That's when I had a strange feeling, like someone's watching me. I looked up and nearly jumped out of my bed. There in the little ray of light illuminating from between my curtains were a pair of two eyes. These weren't regular eyes, they were dark, ominous eyes. They were bordered in black and just plain out terrifying me. That's when I saw his mouth, a long, horrendous smile that made every hair on my body stand up. The figure stood there, watching me. Finally, after what seemed like forever, he said a simple phrase, but in a way only a madman can speak. He said, "Go to sleep." I let out a scream. That's what sent him at me. He pulled up a knife, aiming at my heart. He jumped on top of my bed. I fought back. I kicked. I punched. I rolled around trying to knock him off of me. That's when my dad busted in. The man threw the knife. It went into my dad's shoulder. The man probably would have finished him off if one of the neighbors hadn't alerted the police. They drove into the parking lot and ran towards the door. The man turned and ran down the hallway. I heard a smash, like glass breaking, as I came out of my room. I saw the window that was pointing towards the back of my house was broken. I looked out and to see him vanish into the distance. I can tell you one thing. I will never forget that face, those cold, evil eyes. That psychotic smile. They will never leave my head. The police are still looking for this man. If you see anyone that fits this description in the story, please contact your local police department. Jeff and his family had just moved into a neighborhood. His dad had gotten a promotion at work, and they thought it would be best to live in one of the fancy neighborhoods. Jeff and his brother Lou couldn't complain though. A new, better house. What was not to love? As they were getting unpacked, one of the neighbors came by. "Hello," she said. "I'm Barbara. I live across the street from you. Well, I just wanted to introduce myself to introduce my son." She turns around and calls her son over. "Billy!" "These are our new neighbors." Billy said hi and ran back to play in the yard. "Well," Jeff's mom said, "I'm Margaret, and this is my husband, Peter, and my two sons, Jeff and Lou." They each introduced themselves, and then Barbara invited them to her son's birthday. Jeff and his brother were about to object when their mother said that they would love to. When Jeff and his family are done packing, Jeff went up to his mom. "Mom, why did you invite us to some kid's party? If you haven't noticed, I'm not some dumb kid." "Jeff," said his mother, "we just moved here. We should show that we want to spend time with our neighbors. Now we're going to that party, and that's final." Jeff started talking, but stopped himself, knowing that he couldn't do anything whenever his mom said something. It was final. He walked up to his mom and plopped down on his bed. He sat there looking at the ceiling, when suddenly he got a weird feeling. Not so much a pain, but a weird feeling. He dismissed it as just some random feeling. He heard his mom call him down to get some stuff, and he walked down to get it. The next day, Jeff walked down the stairs to get breakfast and got ready for school. As he sat there eating his breakfast, once again got that feeling. This time it was a lot stronger. It gave him a sight of tugging pain, but he once again dismissed it. But he and Lou finished breakfast. They walked down to the bus stop. They sat there waiting for the bus, and then all of a sudden, some kid on a skateboard jumped over them, only inches above their laps. They both jumped back in surprise. "Hey, what the hell?" The kid landed and turned back to them. He kicked a skateboard up and caught it with his hands. The kid seemed to be about 12, 1 year younger than Jeff. He wears his Aero pastel shirt and ripped blue jeans. Well, well, well. Looks like we got some new meat. Suddenly, 2 other kids appeared. One was super skinny and the other one was huge. "Well, since you're new here, I'd like to introduce ourselves. Over there is Keith." Jeff and Lou looked over to the skinny kid. He had a dopey face you would expect a sidekick to have. "And this is Troy." They looked over at the fat kid, talked about a tub of lard. "This kid looks like he hasn't exercised since he was crawling." "And I," said the first kid, "am Randy. Now, for all the kids in the neighborhood, there is a small price to pay, a bus fare. If you catch my drift." Lou stood up and ready to punch the lights out of the kid. One of them, the friends pulled up a knife. One of them said, "Tisk, tisk, tisk. I hope you would be more cooperative, but it seems we must do this the hard way." The kid walked up to Lou and took his wallet out of his pocket. Jeff got that feeling again. "Now, it's truly strong. A burning sensation." He stood up, but Lou gestured him to sit down. Jeff ignored him and walked up to the kid. "Listen here, you little punk. Give back my bro's wallet or else." Randy put the wallet in his pocket and pulled out his own knife. "Oh, and what will you do?" Just as he finished the sentence, Jeff popped the kid in the nose. As Randy reached for his face, Jeff grabs the kid's wrist and breaks it. Randy screamed and Jeff grabbed the knife from his hands. Troy and Keith rushed to Jeff, but Jeff was too quick. He threw Randy on the ground. Keith lashed out at him, but Jeff ducked and stabbed him in the arm. Keith dropped his knife and fell on the ground, screaming. Troy rushed him too, but Jeff didn't even need to get the knife. He just punched Troy straight in the stomach and Troy went down. As he fell, he puked over. Lou could do nothing but look at amazement at Jeff. "Jeff, how'd you..." That's all he said. They saw the bus coming and they knew they would be blamed for the whole thing. So they started to run really fast as they could. As they ran, they looked back and saw the bus driver rushing over to Randy and the others. As Jeff and Lou made it to school, they didn't dare tell what happened. All they did was sit and listen. Lou just thought as his big brother beating up a few kids. But Jeff knew it was more. It was something scary. As he got that feeling, he felt how powerful he was. The urge to just hurt someone. He didn't like how it sounded, but couldn't help feeling happy. He felt this strange feeling go away and stay away for an entire day of school. Even as he walked home due to the whole thing near the bus stop, and how he would probably not take the bus anymore. He felt happy. When he got home, his parents asked him how his day was, and he said in a somewhat ominous voice, "It was a wonderful day." Next morning, he heard a knock on his front door. He walked down to find 2 police officers at his door. His mother's looking back at him with anger. "Jeff, these officers tell me that you attacked 3 kids, that it wasn't a regular fight, and that they were stabbed." "Stabbed, son!" Jeff's gaze fell to the floor, showing his mother that it was true. "Mom, they were the ones who pulled the knives on me and Lou." "Son," said one of the cops, "we found 3 kids. 2 stabbed. One of them bruised on the stomach. And we have witnessed to providing to that you fled this scene. Now, what does that tell us? Jeff knew it was no use. He could say to him and Lou had been attacked, but then there was no proof of it. Not to who attacked him first. They couldn't say that they were fleeing because, truth be told, they were. So Jeff couldn't defend himself or Lou. Son, call down your brother. Jeff couldn't do it, since it was him who beat up the kids. Sir, it was me. I was the one who beat up those kids. Lou tried to hold me back, but those kids couldn't stop me. The cops look at his partner and they both nod. Well, kid, it looks like a year at juvie. Wait, said Lou. They all looked up to him, holding a knife. The officer pulled their guns and locked on Lou. It was me. I'm the one who beat up the punks. Have the marks to prove it. He lifted his sleeves to reveal cuts and bruises, as if they were in a struggle. Son, just put down the knife, said the officer. Lou held up the knife and dropped it to the ground. He put his hand up and walked over to the cops. No, Lou! It was me! I did it! Jeff tears run down his face. Ah, poor bro. Trying to take the blame for what I did? Well, take me away. The police led Lou out the patrol car. Lou, tell them it was me. Tell them. I was the one who beat up those kids. Jeff's mother put her hands on his shoulders. Jeff, please. You don't have to lie. We know it's Lou. You can stop. Jeff watched helplessly as the cop car sped off with Lou inside. A few minutes later, Jeff's dad pulled into the driveway, seeing Jeff's face and knowing something was wrong. Son, what is it? Jeff couldn't answer. His vocal cords were strained from crying. Instead of Jeff's mother walked his father inside to break the bad news to him as Jeff wept in the driveway. After an hour or so, Jeff walked back into the house. Seeing his parents were both shocked, sad, and disappointed. He couldn't look at him. He couldn't see how they thought of Lou when it was his fault. He just went to sleep trying to get the whole thing off his mind. The 2 days went by. No word from Lou from the JDC. No friends to hang out with. Nothing but sadness and guilt. That is until Saturday. Jeff is woke by his mother with a happy, sunshine face. Jeff, it's the day, she said as she opened up the curtains and light flooded into the room. What? What's today? Asked Jeff as he stirs awake. Why, it's Billy's birthday. Now he's fully awake. Mom, you're joking, right? You don't expect me to go to some kid's birthday party after... There was a long pause. Jeff, we both know what happened. I think this party could do the thing that brightens up past days. Now get dressed. Jeff's mother walked out of the room to downstairs to get herself ready. He fought himself to get up. He picked out a random shirt, a pair of jeans, and walked down the stairs. He saw his mother and father all dressed up, his mother in a dress and the father in a suit. He thought, why would they ever wear such fancy clothes to a kid's party? Son, is that all you're going to wear? Said Jeff's mom. Better than wearing too much, he said. His mother pushed down the feeling to yell at him and hit it with a smile. Now, Jeff, we may be overdressed, but this is how you go if you want to make an impression, said his father. Jeff grunted and went back up to his room. I don't have any fancy clothes, he yelled downstairs. Just pick out something, called his mother. He looked around in his closet, what he called fancy. He got a pair of black pants, and he had a special occasion and an undershirt. He couldn't find a shirt to go with. He looked around and found a striped and patterned shirt, none of which would go with dress pants. Finally, he found a white hoodie and put it on. "You're wearing that?" they both said. His mother looked at her watch. "Oh no. Time to change. Let's just go," she said as she heard Jeff and his father out the door. They crossed the street over to Barbara and Billy's house. They knocked on the door, and it appeared that Barbara, just like his parents, was way overdressed. As they walked inside, all Jeff could see were adults, no kids. The kids were all out in the yard. "Jeff, how about you go and meet some of them?" Barbara said. Jeff walked outside the yard full of kids. They were running around in a weird cowboy costume and shooting each other with plastic guns. He might as well be standing in a Toys R Us. Suddenly, a kid came up to him and handed him a toy gun hat. "Hey, you want to play?" he said. No, kid. I'm way too old for this stuff." The kid looked at him with that weird puppy dog face. "Please," said the kid. "Fine," said Jeff. He put on the hat and started to pretend to shoot at the kids. At first, he thought it was totally ridiculous, but then he started actually having fun. It might not have been super cool, but it was the first time he had done something that took his mind off of something. Off of Lou. So he played with the kids for a while until he heard a noise, a weird rolling noise. Then it hit him. Randy, Troy, and Keith all jumped over the fence on their skateboards. Jeff dropped the fake gun and ripped off his hat. Randy looked at Jeff with a burning hatred. "Hello, Jeff, is it?" he said. "We have some unfinished business." Jeff saw the bruises on the nose. "I think we're even. I beat the crap out of you, and you get my brother sent to the JDC. Randy got an angry look in his eyes. "Oh no, I don't even go for. I go for the winning. You may have kicked our asses that one day, but not today." As Randy rushed at Jeff, they both fell on the ground. Randy punched Jeff in the nose, and Jeff grabbed him by the ears and head butted him. Jeff pushed Randy off of him, and both rose to their feet. Kids were screaming and parents were running out of the house. Troy and Keith both pulled their guns out of their pocket. "No one interrupts or guts will fly," they said. Randy pulls the knife on Jeff and stabs him in the shoulder. Jeff screams and fell to his knees. Randy starts kicking him in the face. After 3 kicks, Jeff grabs his foot and twists it, causing Randy to fall on the ground. Jeff stood up and walking towards the back door. Troy grabs him. "Need some help?" He picked Jeff off on the back of the collar and throw him through the patio door, and Jeff tries to stand up and kicks down to the ground. Randy repeatedly starts kicking Jeff until he starts to cough up blood. "Come on, Jeff! Fight me!" He picks up Jeff and throws him in the kitchen. Randy sees a bottle of vodka on the counter and smashes the glass over Jeff's head. "Fight!" He throws Jeff back into the living room. "Come on, Jeff, look at me!" Jeff glances up, his face riddled with blood. "I was the one who got your brother sent to the JDC, and now you're just gonna sit there and let me riot on you for a whole year? You should just be ashamed." Jeff starts to get up. "Oh, finally! You stand and fight?" Jeff is now on his feet, blood and vodka on his face. Once again, he gets in a strange feeling, this one in which he hasn't felt in a while. "Finally, he's up," says Randy as he rushes at Jeff. That's when it happens. Something inside Jeff snapped. His psyche is destroyed. All rational thinking is gone. All he can do is kill. He grabs Randy and pile drives him into the ground. He gets on top of him and punches him straight in the heart. The punches causes Randy's heart to stop. As Randy grasps for air, Jeff hammers down on him. Punch after punch, blood gushing from Randy's body, until he takes one final breath and dies. Everyone is looking at Jeff now. The parents, the crying kids, even Troy and Keith. Although they easily break their gaze at the point of their gun at Jeff, Jeff sees the guns trained on him and runs upstairs. As he runs, Troy and Keith let out a fire on him, each shot missing. Jeff runs up the stairs. He hears Troy and Keith following up. As they let out their final rounds of bullets, Jeff ducks into the bathroom. He grabs the towel rack and rips it off the wall. Troy and Keith race in, knives ready. Troy sinks his knife at Jeff, who backs away and bangs into the towel rack into Troy's face. Troy goes down hard, and now all that's left is Keith. He is more agile than Troy, though, and ducks. Even Jeff swings down the towel rack. He drops the knife and grabs Jeff by the neck. He pushed him down the wall. A thing of bleach fell down on top of him from a shelf. It burnt both of them, and both started to scream. Jeff wiped his eyes the best he could. He pulled back the towel rack and swung it straight into Keith's head as he laid there bleeding to death, as he let out an ominous smile. "What's so funny?" asked Jeff. Keith pulled out a lighter and switched it on. "What's funny," he said, "is that you're covered in bleach and alcohol." Jeff's eyes widened as Keith threw the lighter at him. As soon as the flames made contact with him, the flames ignited alcohol in the vodka. While the alcohol was burning him, the bleach his skin, Jeff let out a terrible screech as he caught himself on fire. He tried to roll out of the fire, but it was no use. The alcohol had made him a walking inferno. He ran down the hall and fell down the stairs. Everybody stared and screamed and saw Jeff, now a man on fire, drop to the ground nearly dead. The last thing Jeff saw was his mother and the other parents trying to extinguish the flame. That's when he passed out. When Jeff woke, he had a cast wrapped around his face. He couldn't see anything, but he felt a cast around his shoulder and stitches all over his body. He tried to stand up, but he realized that there was some tube in his arm, and when he tried to get up, it fell out, and a nurse rushed. "I don't think you can get out of this bed yet," she said. As she put him back into the bed, reinsert the tube, Jeff sat there with no vision, no idea what his surroundings were. Finally, after hours, he heard his mother. "Honey, are you okay?" she asked. Jeff couldn't answer though. His face was covered and was unable to speak. "Oh honey, I have a great news. After all the witness told the police that Randy confessed trying to attack you, they decided to let Lou go." This made Jeff almost bolt up, stopping halfway. Remember, the tube is coming out of his arm. "He'll be out by tomorrow, but then you two will be able to go together again." Jeff's mother hugs Jeff and says her goodbyes. The next couple of weeks were those where Jeff was visited by his family. Then they came the day where his bandages were to be removed. His family were all there to see it. What he would look like. As the doctor unwrapped the bandage from Jeff's face, everyone was on edge. Their seats, they waited until the last bandage holding the cover his face was almost removed. "Let's hope for the best," says the doctor. He quickly pulls the cloth, letting the rest fall from Jeff's face. Jeff's mother screamed at the sight of his face. Lou and Jeff's dad stare awestruck at his face. What happened to my face?" Jeff said. He rushed out of his bed and ran into the bedroom. He looked in the mirror and saw the cause of the distress in his face. It was horrible. The lips were burnt in deep shade of red. His face was turned into pure white color, and his hair singed from brown to black. He slowly put his hand to his face. It had sort of a leathery feel to it now. He looked back to his family, then back at the mirror. "Jeff," Lou said, "it's not that bad." "Not that bad?" said Jeff. "It's perfect." His family were equally surprised. Jeff started laughing uncontrollably. His parents noticed that he left his eyes and hands were twitching. Jeff, are you okay?" "Okay? I've never felt so happy." "Look at me. This face goes perfectly with me." He couldn't stop laughing. He stroked his face, feeling it, looking at the mirror. What caused this? Well, you may recall when Jeff was fighting Randy, something in his mind and his sanity snapped. Now he was left a crazy killing machine. That's it. His parents didn't know. "Doctor," said Jeff's mom, "is my son all right? In the head?" "Oh yes, this behavior is typical for the patients. They have taken a large amount of painkillers. If the behavior doesn't change in a few weeks, bring him back and we'll give him a psychology test." "Oh, thank you, doctor." Jeff's mother went over to Jeff. "Jeff, sweetie, it's time to go." Jeff looked away from the mirror. His face still formed into a crazy smile. "'Kay, Mommy." His mother took him by the shoulders and took him to his clothes. "This is what came in," said the lady at the desk. Jeff's mom looked down to see a black dress, pants, and white hoodie her son wore. Now they were clean of blood and now stitched together. Jeff's mother led him to his room and made him put his clothes on. Then they left, not knowing that this was their final day of life. Later that night, Jeff's mother woke up to a sound coming from the bathroom. It sounded as if someone was crying. She slowly walked over to what she saw. When she looked inside the bathroom, she saw a horrendous smile. Jeff had taken a knife and carved a smile onto his cheeks. "Jeff, what are you doing?" asked his mother. Jeff looked at his mother. "I couldn't keep smiling, Mommy. It hurt me for a while. Now, I could smile forever." Jeff's mother noticed his eyes, ringed in black. "Jeff, your eyes!" His eyes were seemingly never closing. "I couldn't see my face. I got tired of my eyes starting to close. I burned out my eyelids so I could see myself forever. My new face." Jeff's mother slowly started to back away, seeing that her son was going insane. "What's wrong, Mommy? Aren't I beautiful?" "Yes, son," she said. "Yes, you are. Let go of me. Let me go get Daddy, so he can see your face." She ran into the room and shook Jeff's dad from his sleep. "Honey, get the gun." She stopped as saw Jeff in the doorway holding a knife. "Mommy, you lied." This is the last thing they heard as Jeff rushed into them with a knife and getting them both. His brother Lou woke up startled by some noise. He didn't hear anything else, so he just shut his eyes and tried to go back to sleep. As he was on the border of slumber, he got to the strange feeling that someone was watching him. He looked up before Jeff's hand covered his mouth. He slowly raised the knife, ready to plunge it into Lou's face. Lou thrashed here. They were trying to escape Jeff's grip. "Shh," Jeff said. "Go." 2.